So when you execute in the zone, which is what I teach people to be in the zone, including the Yips people, everything seems real narrow, real simple, really calm, really composed. There's no anxiety. There's no confusion. The mind is very calm because you're only focusing on one thing. In this case, I mentioned grip pressure. So the only thing I feel during those last few steps of the swing trigger ritual, my mind's on my grip pressure. Next thing I know, I'm starting my takeaway. Next thing I know, I'm at my finish. And the only thing I've been paying attention to during that roughly 2.5 seconds or so is my grip pressure. That's it. But you take a person with severe yips, they're experiencing intense fear, intense anxiety at the emotional level and at the physical level. But at the mental level, they're having thoughts go by like every 10th of a second. There's a thought coming into their head, and they're all negative. And they're like, how many ways am I going to screw this up?
Golf Smarter, number 754. It's golf's global pandemic known as the Yips, and we've got your mask. The Yoda of Yips, Jim Waldron.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Jimmy.
Thank you, Fred. Great to be back for, I think it's 27 times. Something like that.
I can't count that high. Well,
yeah.
That's why my golf scores seem to be low. And it's funny because you paused for a moment, and because I said Jimmy, I thought, he doesn't respond to Jimmy.
Oh, no. My whole family calls me Jimmy. Yeah.
Well, we're family now. We've done this enough times.
Of course, yeah. You can call me Jimmy anytime you want.
All right. Well, you can call me Fred.
Okay.
Don't call me
good
Freddie.
Good to know, Fredo.
Yeah, right.
Fredo, okay?
Oh, Fredo.
Because of the Godfather references.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's never good because it's like you disappoint me.
You were my brother, Fredo. You were my brother.
Please don't call me Frederick because that is not my name, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
All right, now that we've gotten past the warm and fuzzies, it's always good to talk to you, though. It's always
likewise.
Good. Jim Waldron, BalancePointGolf.com. And you are, your website says you're the Yips Whisperer, but I like to refer to you as the Yoda of Yips. You are our guide.
Creative he is.
Well, you see, you've earned your position. You haven't whispered to me once yet. But
podcast moderator he is. Talking about the Yips. Yeah, maybe.
And it's amazing how many people don't identify the Yips. They just think they have I have a friend who's got this issue on short putts. Mm-hmm. And I can see that his left arm is pointing straight to the sky. His elbow is pointing out when he does these putts. And he moves his hands along and sticks his elbow out. And then he twists the club handle. And he's like, wait, where'd the brake go? It's like, dude, it wasn't the brake. So I tried, I suggested the other day, I said, and this guy's not really open to suggestions. He doesn't like to tweak his game. And I feel like I'm constantly tweaking. But I said, try putting a towel under your left arm. Just keep it there. Mm-hmm. Right? And he's like, well, I didn't do that, but I kept, I was more conscious of my arm being still. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, this isn't about the yips particularly, but that particular flaw, although it could be a yip, but that's like one of the most common flaws we see in our putting instruction. People think they're doing what they see on the pros do on TV.
Yeah.
But what most amateurs see is the upper arms moving sideways across the chest, right? And the pros don't do that. Their whole shoulder girdle and their arms and their hands are one unit, one triangle that rocks like this vertically. Doesn't rotate. The arms don't move independently in the sockets. Unless they get a really, really long putt, like the greens they play on are so fast, maybe like 80 foot or longer, then they'll have a little independent arm motion. But basically, they're just rocking their shoulder girdle up and down like a teeter-totter. Mm-hmm. Right? And the arms, everything stays together. There's no slack in the system. It's one sort of taut triangle.
Okay.
But the average person thinks they because it's often called a pendulum stroke or an arms and shoulder stroke.
Right.
And they think the arms have an independent job to do and the shoulders have an independent. It's just not true. It's arms and shoulders are one thing. I saw Phil Mickelson working on this in a tournament while I was waiting his turn to putt, and he took he took a club shaft and stuck it under his armpits.
Yep,
and,
I saw
and was
that
just rocking
recently.
his shoulder girdle like that. Yeah, that's what he was practicing. Yeah.
Interesting. Are the greens that fast on tour? That
Oh, now
like
they
an-
are.
like
Starting
an
about 10 years ago.
Yeah, but like an 80-foot putt for them is like a 20-footer, like for us.
No,
usually?
not that much. No, but I mean they're averaging probably 11 to 13, and they've been a little higher than that in some of the U.S. Opens. They're probably averaging 12 and a half, something like that. That's pretty fast.
And
I mean, the average.
But you know, the 12 to 13, it really doesn't translate to somebody who doesn't understand it or has the equipment to go, oh well, this is at a 12. What does that all mean?
Well, they have a device called a stimp meter, which is
Right.
basically, it looks like a roller coaster ramp, and it's just a ramp, and they put a ball on it. They find a level spot on the green, and they roll a ball off it. They just hold the ball and let it go. Right, so it's under the influence of gravity and momentum, and then it rolls out 13 feet. That's how they determine.
Oh, it's feet. Okay.
Yeah, it's feet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that
stimp
makes
meter.
right. No, I've heard of stimp meter. We've had conversations about it, but what do public golf courses try to maintain as for their greens?
I mean, I've obviously have some knowledge about that. I would say the typical reasonably well-maintained public course is somewhere between 8 and 10. Like you've been to Quail Valley where I teach in the summer in Portland. They stay right around 10 in the summer months. But there are public golf courses in Hawaii, the city-owned courses, the munis, traditional Hawaiian Bermuda grass, where they're like literally, partly because they don't cut them. They don't cut them every single day. They can be, I've seen them as slow as 6 feet, which is really slow. It's almost like putting on the fringe at a high-end private course. That's how slow the greens are at some of the Hawaiian city-owned courses.
Wow.
Yeah.
How or what would you suggest? What are great ways to test the speed of a putting green on the practice putting green before your round? I'm wondering if you have suggestions, because I have my own methods of doing it, but I'd love to get advice.
Yeah, well, first of all, generally speaking, in my experience, most courses, the practice green isn't the same speed as the greens you're going to play on. That's kind of a known fact. Sometimes they are, but oftentimes they're not.
Wow, wait.
Yeah.
Because I've asked, like when I talk to people who work at golf courses and stuff, I say, is the greens, your practice putting green at the same speed as your greens? They said, yeah, because they're cut by the same machines.
In my experience, it's just not true. It's definitely not true most of the time on public golf. On private courses, certainly, but in public golf courses, no. They're often slower. The practice green is oftentimes slower than the greens that you'll play on.
Well, then I guess that's almost the same as when you're on the driving range before a round warming up, don't look at distance, just look at your ball flight, because the balls that they're giving you are not going to
Yeah, it's similar to that. It's similar to that. Yeah, the range balls don't go as far.
Yeah, exactly. But still, should you be looking at ball flight? Is that something to be checking out when you're hitting balls at the range in your warm-up?
No, you just have to realize, even if they're good range balls, they're not going to go as far as like a Pro V1, a high-quality, high-end ball will go.
Right.
Yeah, so it's as much as 10% on a driver. It's significant. It's like 2%, 3% on a wedge or a short iron, typically. And that's if they're new balls, newish balls.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Huh. Okay, so what are we looking at when we go to the driving range and to warm up? I mean, what are we trying to do? Just get the body loose? Are we getting?
Yeah, I mean, you're basically trying to get a feel for the day, for your swing. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. You're warming up. You're trying to get a feel.
Yeah.
Check out your tempo and your rhythm for the day.
So it's tempo and rhythm, not necessarily, oh, look, I'm hitting the ball really far today.
No, because if you're at all decent, you have kind of a stock distance. You hit the ball anyhow. So if you're hitting it significantly further, that would be pretty rare in my experience.
Interesting. So That was a sidetrack because that's not what we were talking about today. But we never stay on topic anyway.
We never do. No, we have a history of that for sure.
So,
all right, you want to talk about the yips?
No, I want to know. We'll get there after the first break, which is just, I don't want to start a new story because we're so close to the break right now. But I'm just curious, how's business been for you during COVID and the lockdown and people can't see face to face? It's been
unbelievably strong. I mean, I'm shocked because I'm not doing any in person like most people I know in the business until there's a treatment or a vaccine. And partly because as you know, I don't live where I work. It's a 6.5 hour drive from my house to Portland. Uh-huh. So for the last 30 years, I travel the 6.5 hours. I stay there for 2 weeks or even sometimes 3 weeks, work pretty much every day, and then drive home because I live up in this beautiful place up in the mountains.
Where your Wi-Fi
I've been doing that.
is.
Yeah, where my Wi-Fi stinks. So no, I'm doing tons and tons every day, webcam lessons. It's been really, really busy. I've been surprised, actually.
And you get to do it from home.
Yeah, and it's 70% yips and mental game, 30% conventional.
Wow.
Yeah.
So business is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've had in the last 10 days, I've had 9 different new students with Yips sign up.
Any Golf Smarter listeners?
I'm sure some are. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
How else do they hear about you from South Carolina?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they hear about me all kinds of ways, but Golf Smarter is definitely one of them for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, good. Well, I'll gloat on that for a few minutes, and we'll be back right after this. If you're new to Golf Smarter, welcome, and thanks for checking us out. I've been doing these conversations on game improvement and golf lifestyle every week since 2005. But the podcast app that you're listening to right now only carries between 250 and 300 episodes, and we're up to number 754. Now, in all these years, we've learned a very important fact that game improvement insights don't get old. It's actually best summed up by Matt, who posted a review this week in iTunes that said, "You know a podcast is good when you find yourself listening to all the episodes from 3 to 4 years ago, as well as the new ones." Thank you, Matt. That's why we've gone back in our archives and created Golf Smarter Mulligans, your chance to hear the best of the best from our library that's just no longer available. This week, we bring back one of those episodes that answers the question that I get all the time. Who was your favorite guest? Well, there's more of a list than a single episode, but this definitely makes the top 10 list. Our guest is legendary PGA Tour caddy for Peter Jacobsen, Tiger Woods, and is still looping for Jim Furyk, Mike Cowan, better known as Fluff.
I'd have to say that Peter Jacobsen is probably the best friend I've ever had.
Oh, that's very nice.
We had a great time together. We did a lot of fun things, and we shared a lot of the same interests. We both love music, both love the game of golf. The chemistry was there for a long, long time.
I think for a couple of guys, if you can share those two things, you can hang out for quite a while and have a great time.
I tell people that what I do, well, first of all, I love what I do. And again, I feel blessed to be making a living doing something that I absolutely love. And it beats the heck out of working.
That's episode 70 of Golf Smarter Mulligans featuring PGA Tour caddy Fluff, being released this Friday. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are free and available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please subscribe and hear new episodes of Golf Smarter each Tuesday and Golf Smarter Mulligans every Friday. Okay, Yoda, let's go Yips.
Okay. You want the update?
Yeah.
We last did this, I think, about a year ago, and you were surprised at the time that I have Tour Pro clients, and you were surprised at the time that the majority of my Yip students are 5 handicaps or better. That's still the case.
Yeah.
At that time, I vividly recall we discussed the fact that there was a big increase in the frequency of people contacting me with severe short game yips. And I said it used to be full swing yips was the most frequent type of yip reported by golfers. And they were close to being tied. Well, since that podcast, it has flipped. So now I'm getting more people with short game yips than any other type of yip. Still a fairly close second, though, is full swing yips, especially driver yips. In the last month, I've had 7 different people from different places on the globe with severe driver yips. I got a guy from Canada, 2 guys from Ireland, a guy from Germany, and a guy from London, 2 guys from London with driver yips. They only yip the driver.
Did I tell you about the email that I received about somebody who
you did?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The kid who I was coaching.
The basketball thing. So it's really taken off, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the yips in general is exploding. It's like a yip pandemic. It really is, because it is global. Because again, I get contacted from people all over the world, not just the States. And it's still, once again, dead last is putting, which is sort of funny how that's the mainstream view, that it's only putting. And it's less than 10% of the people who contact me have putting yips.
Interesting.
And I think some of that's because if you only have a mild to moderate case of putting yips and you do switch to a radically different grip, like you go left hand low, or maybe split hand left hand low, or Bernhard Longer grip, or Krista Marco's, original claw grip, or the paintbrush grip, or even you go to putting lefty with a left-handed putter. That's another way. That will often work if you have mild yips to create a complete elimination of the yip. So I think in a way, if you have putting yips and it's mild to moderate on the intensity and frequency scale, you might be able to fix it doing something like that. But when you have what I call moderate to severe yips, both intensity and frequency, you really can't fix it by yourself. You need an outside force, a coach, to basically intervene on your behalf. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do people recognize that they have the yips and then contact you, or do they think they just have something going on with their swing, they need help, and then you identify it as yips, and they're like, no, I don't have the yips?
No, the latter it has happened a few times, but almost never. Generally, people know they have them for sure. Uh-huh. Yeah. It's qualitatively different than just hitting a bad shot. It is a bad shot outcome, always, when you have the yips. But the psychological and even the physical experience that you feel in your body is remotely different than just, say, a bad swing flaw that causes a bad shot. Really? If you watch someone with severe yips, it looks like they have Parkinson's disease. You can see a body part literally jerk, and you don't even need slow motion video to see it. It's completely obvious.
Wow.
It looks really strange. It looks very herky-jerky. Uh-huh. And the yip impulse itself manifests in the body as a sudden spasming or sudden tightening of one or more muscles in your body. That's literally what it is.
So share some stories with me of somebody so I can get a better visual idea of what it looks like and what the person is going through to figure out what this all means.
I had a guy who's one of the top 10 CEOs in the world. He's the CEO of a major corporation, fly out from New York City about 8 years ago. He had wedge yips, only wedges. And the way he yipped is he stayed in his forward, what's called hip flexion, meaning he stayed in his forward spine angle on the finish. So when you hit the ball, of course, you're bent over, right? But then right after you hit the ball in a normal swing, you stand up. Well, he would actually bend over more. So he actually would increase his spine angle and finish his swing. Now, I know your listeners aren't going to be able to see this, but I know you can see me because we're on FaceTime. So he would finish his swing like this instead of like this.
Oh, so he was completely bent over.
Completely bent over, but only on wedges. So that's one example. A more common example is the right wrist flips sideways like that. That's a real common form of yip, particularly in putting and chipping. To some degree in pitching, you see that a lot. You also see that in bunker yips. People go like that. So your wrist is supposed to go like down, right? It's supposed to go like this, not this way. It's supposed to go this way, right?
Okay.
It goes down. It should go down, not sideways when you release the wrist angle.
Okay.
So that's pretty common. And it's not just the fact that the muscles are tightening up quickly and a lot in terms of intensity of muscle firing. It's also that there's an emotional component which people experience before the yip impulse manifests with the muscle tightening. They experience a high level of the physiological syndrome called anxiety. So they have heart rate speeds up. They get cotton mouth. Sometimes they get lightheaded. They get nauseous. Sometimes they get butterflies in their stomach. Their hands start to sweat. And along with the emotional component of that, which is fear. So they actually have some level of fear. And I've seen people with severe yips where it's like, it's bordering on panic. I know people I've worked with have told me, a few, that the panic was so great, they literally dropped their clubs on the ground and ran back to the clubhouse and got in their car and went home.
Oh my God.
Couldn't deal with it.
Oh,
okay, it's like, it can be, now that's an extreme example, but it can be that level of fear where you just can't deal with it anymore and you leave. Yeah.
Golf shouldn't do that to you.
I agree.
It's a game.
Yeah, the worst thing that can happen to a golfer is the yips. It's a severe affliction. It really is. And a lot of people end up quitting because they just don't know, because, we talked about this before, though. When you're by yourself with moderate to severe yips, everything your common sense tells you might work that you try to do actually makes the yips worse.
Wow.
It's like pouring gasoline on the fire. That's what it is.
Sure.
So one of our early exercises is we tell people I actually counted them up because I knew we were going to talk about this. There's in my Yips Cure program, if you don't count any of the major or minor, although usually it's minor, mechanical changes, just purely the psychological stuff, or how you use your eyes, how you use your mental focus, how you deal with emotions. There's 65 drills. 65 possible ways of doing it. Yeah. And they all work to some degree. But when you have severe yips, it takes a tremendous amount of dedication and some fair amount of practice time to undo it, for sure.
And you need someone to hold your hand, don't you?
Well, you need like a psychological support system.
Sure.
Yeah. For sure, yeah. But anyway, I was going to say that one of the first drills in the program of the 65, I guess technically it's the second drill we do, is where you try to yip on purpose. And I had a conversation with a guy from Canada, one of the guys with driver yips I was mentioning earlier, and he said we had only done 2 sessions, 2 out of 4 webcam sessions. We had finished the second session, and he said it was amazing when the first few rounds of golf I played, I tried to yip every other driver on purpose. He goes, and I didn't have a single yip the whole day.
Oh.
He says it was the weirdest thing because he spent the last 10 years trying not to yip, and his yips kept getting worse and worse. Now he's trying to create the yip, which is the way his muscles tightened up. In his case, it was holding on. His grip pressure would tighten up. His forearms would not roll over. So he was basically a massive amount of what we call steering. He was not letting the release happen. He was holding on when he should have been letting the energy go into the club head. And typically when you do that, you hit a big block off to the right. That's the typical shot outcome when you have that form of a yip. He said, I tried really hard every other tee box when I had a par 4 or par 5 with a driver in my hand to yip. He goes, and it was the weirdest thing. I hit the ball dead straight right down the middle. Perfect. Isn't that interesting? When you try to yip on purpose, you can't yip.
And when you're trying to recreate your yip, too.
Correct. Because technically it's not a yip, because a yip by itself, definitionally, is 100% involuntary.
Huh. I want to take another time out. We'll be right back. Give me I'm grateful that I have no idea what this feels like or what it looks like. Right now in my life, I'm grateful not to have the yips or know anything about it other than our conversation. So how does it look if you're his playing partner and you've been playing with this guy? How would I recognize it? How would the average golfer?
If you were paying close attention to the person's practice swing, and it's almost. I mean, I've only seen 3 cases in 30 years of people yipping on a practice swing, and then it's very, very mild. So, but for all intents and purposes, we talked about this before. You don't yip on a practice swing, right? So, if you look at their practice swing, it'll look generally smooth, right? Not herky jerky. And then look at their ball swing, and you'll see either a slowing down or a speeding up. You'll see their chest slow down when it should be, accelerating on the downswing, or you'll see it accelerating much faster than what you would call normal tempo. So there's either a slowing down of tempo or a speeding up of tempo. But it also looks like it lacks rhythm. So it just looks like non-athletic, kind of jerky looking. That's one way you can tell. Yeah. You can also, almost all cases of moderate to severe yips, the person holds their breath right before they take it back, and they stay in that holding their breath condition all the way to the finish. That's another tell.
Wow.
Yeah. But if you can read nonverbals, they look scared. If it's moderate to severe, their body language sort of sends all the nonverbal signals of I'm having anxiety right now. I'm afraid. So that kind of manifests too. When they walk up to the ball, you can tell they're afraid something terrible is about to happen, because that's what it feels like. When you talk to people who have severe yips, it's like they know. It's not just the yip itself. It's always preceded by a premonition, like, oh my God, something bad is about to happen here in the next 30 seconds. Right?
And they just get anxious, nervous, shaky?
Oh, unbelievable. Oh, yeah. Like they feel like something really bad is about to happen. Oh. Like there's a big threat about to happen. That's a big part of my cure, is helping my students who have yips to identify what's called the threat scan part of your brain, which scans the physical environment for physical threats. The way this part of your brain evolved was to protect you from death and injury, from being eaten by a wild animal, for example. But in the modern era, that part of the brain that scans the physical environment for physical threats has become linked to the psychological phenomena known as ego or self-image or sense of self or identity. So when you feel like you're about to embarrass yourself, because that's really the big deal in golf in general, whether you have yips or not. People are afraid of failing so badly in front of other people. And that feeling, and you know, the deep feeling of embarrassment is called shame. That's like the technical definition. It's called shame. And shame is one of the most powerful human emotions. So when you're trying to protect yourself from feeling shame, right, that thing is what basically comprises what I call the yip bomb. I use the bomb analogy. So when you have a moderate to severe yip, particularly severe intensity, it feels like a bomb goes off inside your body. When the muscle's tightening up, that's what it feels like. It's just suddenly a muscle just instantly tightens up, and it just comes out of nowhere. And that's what I call the yip bomb exploding. But what the yip bomb is in and of itself is it's the attempt to help out, to try to prevent a bad shot from happening. We call it the helping out impulse, right? So the yip impulse is a part of your unconscious mind that gets created in response to, you know, many, many, many bad shots going over many, many years, typically, to where you have zero confidence. So once you have zero confidence, the yip impulse shows up as a substitute or compensation for lack of confidence. And so it's trying to help you prevent failure. But, of course, it creates failure. Mm-hmm. But the unconscious mind doesn't have the ability to recognize behavioral outcomes. So it's not in touch with the real world. So it doesn't know that you're actually hitting a bad shot. All it knows is it's sending a signal to a muscle to do something to try to prevent catastrophe that you feel is about to happen. It's one reason a very common form of yips, particularly in putting and chipping and short pitching, you'll see people, they'll literally stop right when they hit the ball. Right when the club face touches the ball, everything stops. So their finish, for all intents and purposes, is impact. Mm-hmm. And I call that the analogy, that's like the check swing in baseball. When you decide it's going to be outside and high, the pitch, as you see the ball leave the pitcher's hand, and then you change your mind and you go, no, it's going to be inside and low. But your body's already started to step into the pitch and you kind of stop, right? And as long as your hands don't pass midline, it's not considered to be a strike, right?
Right.
In baseball. But there's that element to most yips have that element. You're trying to save yourself from hitting a catastrophically bad shot by tightening up. That's the helping out part. But so that's a big part. That's roughly half of the yip bomb. The other half is this feeling like that you've incorrectly or wrongly linked your self-esteem as a person to the outcome of the shot, which in anything you do in life, in my view, that's a fundamental mistake to do, right? because we're human beings and we're subject to making mistakes. And if you're constantly putting your sense of self-worth on the line, particularly in a sport as difficult as golf is, and there's no sport that's even a close second in terms of difficulty, in my opinion. And we talked about this before too in other podcasts, because most of the time you fail to hit the target exactly the way you intended in golf. So in golf, in a way, failure is the norm. And if you have an unhealthy psychological relationship with failure, that alone can trigger the yip, right? Or as you say, that alone will create the yip impulse. Now, interestingly enough, the yip bomb cannot trigger itself, which is good for people who have the yips. In other words, the yip impulse itself, which another way of saying would be the so-called yip bomb, it's there. It could potentially go off at any time in your stroke. And until you unravel what the root causes are, which takes some time, it takes anywhere between, in my experience, 1 to 3 months for most of my yip students. Some do it faster, but for most people, they don't achieve complete elimination until around 30 to 90 days on the program, right? But until that happens, the cool thing about this is you can learn how to use your mind so you don't trigger the bomb. In other words, every bomb has to have a switch that's external to the bomb. Someone has to turn on the switch, right, to make the bomb explode. And that's kind of how it works with the yips. It's possible to recognize what mental and emotional triggers switch on the bomb. And then you can learn how to control your awareness, your thought process, your emotions, so you simply don't trigger the yip in the first place. So my program has sort of a short and a medium term approach, which is learning to identify the triggers and then simply not going there. And it has a long term approach, which is all about no longer engaging or identifying your self-worth with the outcome of the shot or with your score for the day. So it's sort of a two-pronged approach.
Have you ever witnessed the person's golf yips crossing over into their regular life and messing with their head in their day-to-day life?
Definitely.
Really?
Definitely.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like what?
Yeah. Well, just general. I mean, the yips itself would be considered in the broad picture, big picture category, like what's called a neurosis, to distinguish it from so psychosis. Everybody knows psychosis means you're severely mentally ill. And neurosis means mild mental dysfunction, right? So, and since the yip also falls under the category of an anxiety disorder or a phobic or phobia disorder, fear, right? Learning the tools for how to calm yourself down, how to switch from anxiety to calmness, how to switch from fear to confidence. It's the same technique whether you apply it to when you have a golf club in your hand or if you're off the golf course in your normal life, your personal life, right? Yeah, it definitely helps both on and off the golf course for sure.
Let's take another quick time out because I need to ask you more questions. We'll be right back. This week on our other sports-related weekly podcast, Radio Baseball Cards, we go back to our interview in 1987 with Toronto Blue Jays first baseman Willie Upshaw talking about growing up loving both baseball and playing music.
Here's another Radio Baseball Card. Willie Upshaw grew up with 14 brothers and sisters, but always seemed to be playing baseball by himself.
I used to go out in the backside of the house and hit rocks all day long with a flat stick, and I used to try to hit the lady's house across the street and pretend I was, Willie Mays hitting home runs all day long.
That's the Radio Baseball Cards podcast. Short stories as told by the greatest baseball players of the 20th century with your host, the late Hall of Famer, Don Drysdale. Radio Baseball Cards is free and available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Is there such a thing as like a reverse yip where they have this weird thing that they do with their swing and it improves their ball flight and they don't know why this is going on? No. That's just a lot.
It's funny you mentioned that because I've been trying to come up with a new term for a big aspect of how I came up with this Yips Cure program. And it came to me about couple of months ago working with a Yips student, and I call it reverse hypnosis. So for that to make sense, you have to know what hypnosis is. So basically, hypnosis is when your conscious mind, either by yourself or with the assistance of a hypnotherapist, decides to program into your unconscious mind new patterns or new programs to create new and better behaviors. So let's say you have insomnia. So you could program through, if you did self-hypnosis, you could put yourself into a trance and program in by repeating, or even by listening to your own voice, repeat a phrase or a sentence that, like, something like at 10:30 at night, you're going to start becoming very drowsy, right? So you would listen to this voice while you're in a trance state. And it doesn't always take, because nothing in life is guaranteed, but if you're in a fairly strong trance and the part of you that wants to overcome the insomnia is stronger than the part that's created the insomnia, then yeah, it'll work to some degree. You'll hypnotize yourself and your insomnia will get better. It works with pain relief. I mean, dentists and doctors use it as an anesthetic where you don't feel pain, right? So that's programming into the unconscious. Well, what I call reverse hypnosis is when you have a program in your unconscious mind, like a yip impulse, that needs to be brought into the light of awareness to basically reverse the spell, reverse the trance. And that falls under the category called meta-awareness training or mindfulness practice. So the mindfulness practice comes out of the Buddhist tradition.
Right.
And it's not just in sitting meditation. If you're practicing Buddhist mind, you do it even in your sleep. When you're dreaming, it's possible to do it. So basically 24/7, whenever you're either asleep but in dream state, in REM sleep, and whenever you're awake, you're trying to be more awake than what I call normal consciousness. You're trying to have meta-awareness, right? We've talked about that a little bit before in other podcasts. But so when you take a yip impulse and you bring it into consciousness, which is what that exercise I mentioned the guy with the driver yips did, I'll tell you what Freud said. Freud said, the founder of psychoanalysis, he said in his first book that the purpose of psychoanalysis is to make the unconscious conscious. Because when you bring a toxic program, unconscious belief or mental picture or conclusion, and you bring it into the light of awareness, it takes the spell away, it takes the power away, right? And the bulk of, not all, because we do both ways. We basically do some programming in part, so more like hypnosis, although I don't put people in trances. But and eventually, in a de facto way, there's some aspect of what I do with my yips people to help them learn to uproot the yip impulse that is programming in new behaviors. But those are generally more on the mechanical side, meaning golf swing mechanics or short game mechanics, programming in new movement patterns, right? But once you have the yip impulse, once you have it, it's 100% psychological. Mm-hmm. It manifests, as we said, with muscles tightening up, which ruins your mechanics. But once you have the yip impulse itself, it's 100% psychological. So the reverse hypnosis part, bringing something that's unconscious into the light of awareness, is a big part of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, the ultimate goal would be to say to you, once someone's secured your expertise to help their yips, the ultimate goal would be to say, "Thank you, I'm done." Right?
Correct.
To fire you.
Yeah.
Is there an average amount of time? Is there a time that you can expect to say, you would say to the person, all right, this should take you 3 or 4 sessions, or we'll be working together for 6 months? I mean...
Oh, no. Usually with the online program, and I've been doing a lot of them in the last 7 months now because of the virus.
Sure.
We're getting, and I keep trying to improve it. I get feedback from students. We find what works really well, what doesn't work quite as well. Well, the guy I mentioned, the guy from Canada with the driver yips, he still had, literally 4 days ago was his 4th lesson. He only had a half hour left on his account. And we were supposed to do the FaceTime, and he sent me an email. He said, "Jim, I don't need it. I'm completely cured. There's no reason." He goes, "Just consider that half hour a tip." So he literally fixed it in 5 weeks. Okay. He went to 100% cure in 5 weeks. And I would say that probably 90% of my online Yips Cure program students achieve somewhere between 50% and 90% reduction in both frequency and intensity within the first 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And the complete cure usually takes 60 to 90 days, where they literally haven't had, they played several rounds of golf and there's been no yips, and several range sessions and no yips. And not only no yips, but no anxiety, no fear. Because one of the really important aspects of my Yips Cure program, I teach people a technique that takes about 6 seconds to do. When you've mastered it. It takes a little longer when you're first learning it. It takes about a minute when you're first learning it. But once you've got some mastery, you know the steps, you can do it in about 6 seconds, or maybe a little longer, 10 seconds, to replace fear with confidence. And it's a formal step in my pre-shot routine, right? And it's based on the Stanislavski method acting technique, which the best film actors in the world have been doing since 1947, when Marlon Brando graduated from the actor studio. Right. Yeah. So you can actually achieve a state of confidence very quickly.
Really?
And if you're super confident, you're not going to yip. It's not going to happen.
Right. And if you're super confident, you're going to make putts. But if you stand there going, I always 3-putt. Oh, I can't putt from this distance.
No, I teach this to everybody, whether they have yips or not. And the way I teach the pre-shot routine, at the very end of stage 2, and there's 5 stages, it takes 30 to 45 seconds to go through all 5 stages. But at the end of stage 2, you formally do a technique that just takes a few seconds, where you access a state of confidence and you say the phrase in your mind, I can do this. But you say it like that. You don't say it like, I can do this.
Can I do this?
If you say it like that, it means you really suck at acting. But if you're good at acting, you say it like, I can do this. Mm-hmm. Right? And to me, I tell people the only time you don't need to access that state of confidence is on a tap-in, gimme putt. Every other shot in golf, you're always going to say that phrase to yourself. And not just say the phrase, but eventually the phrase alone will elicit the mental state, the attitude of confidence, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a big part of the program for helping people overcome their yips, for sure.
Okay. You open the door on this one. I'm not going to let you leave until I don't care when you have to leave. What are the 5 stages?
Oh, well, I'll give you a quick, it would take me, an hour and a
half
routine,
to go over 5 everything. Stages that we can just kind of listen to in our head. The first stage is basically analysis/decision / commitment. Sorry. Well, there's four steps to stage 1. Step 1 is carefree. There's 3 powerful mental states. They're sort of mental, sort of hyphen emotional states. They're called mental attitudes in psychology. So one is being carefree, which detaches yourself from your self-worth from the outcome of the shot. So you basically say to yourself, well, I may screw this up and hit a really bad shot, or I may pure it. I might hit it really close to the pin. I may hit it stiff. Then you say, I'm okay with either outcome. Let's see what happens here. So you're detaching your sense of self-worth and doing that from the outcome of the shot. And doing that releases or rather lowers the emotional intensity level that people bring to the shot-making process. Ideally, you want to be flatlined emotionally. You don't want to have any involvement at all, even positive emotions. The best way to approach the shot-making process is to be like Mr. Spock in Star Trek. No emotion, right? Yeah. Then the next stage is analysis. So you take all the factors into consideration. So the lie of the golf ball, if it's not a tee shot, the wind, the number, the distance, possible targets, possible hazards or trouble spots in the way, and then you make a decision, right? Once you make a decision, you're mainly deciding on the club, the target, maybe the trajectory if you're a better player, or curvature left or right if you're a better player. Once you decide on the primary shot elements, so again, mainly it's the club and the target, then you make a commitment. That's the second C word. Carefree commitment would be second. Another powerful state. And you say something like, I commit, or you just say the word commitment. And that means you're making a decision that you're not going to change your mind like Jordan Spieth did on number 12 5 years ago in the Masters that cost him the tournament, when he switched from a stock 9-iron to a knockdown 9-iron when he started his downswing and he hit a half inch behind the ball. That's an example of a golfer who did not 100% commit to the club and the shot shape he chose. Wow. Right?
He had a little bit of doubt about whether it was the right decision. So commitment's a really big deal, right?
Yeah, really big.
Yeah, it's huge. Anyhow, that's stage 1. Stage 2 is visualization, rehearsal, confidence. So you take one practice swing, doesn't have to be a full swing. I do a half swing with my chest facing the target directly. So as I'm looking out, facing the target like I would face it directly, not like in a golf posture. I simply visualize what I want the ball to do. So I'm picturing the ball going to the target. Yeah. Then I turn and face normal, like a normal golf shot, and I take 2 rehearsal swings, rehearsing my in-swing focal point. Right? Which whatever it's, I've already decided what my focal point is going to be for the day before I left the house. So let's say it's grip pressure. So I'm taking 2 swings focusing on grip pressure, right? Mm-hmm. Then I do the confidence technique, which I can't tell you what it is because it would take an hour show, right? But there's the method technique, and you hear yourself say, "I can do this," along with that technique. All right, that's the end of stage 2. Stage 3 is aim and alignment. So you aim the club face at your intended target, or at least the start line. Align your body parallel left if you're a right-handed player. Stage 4 is your setup routine, and I'm a strong believer you should have a checklist for setup. It shouldn't be very long. Most of it's feel, not thought. So if you watch me set up to a golf shot, I wiggle a lot. My body's making little wiggling movements. I'm looking for certain feelings, right? For example, like I squeeze my inner thighs together. I suck my belly button into my spine. I check my grip pressure. I check my ball position. There's a few others, but you get the idea. Mm-hmm. And I always do it the same way in the same precise order. Mm-hmm. It never varies. Mm-hmm. All right, now I'm done with stage 4. Stage 5 is we call swing trigger ritual, which is really hard to explain in a podcast. But basically, rather than go through what the steps are, I'll just say that there's 7 steps that you go through. Some of it has to do with waggling, rotating your head, looking at the target. But you're going through a precise step-by-step procedure. In my trigger ritual, there's 2 waggles while you're looking at the target. You come back and you trigger your swing, and you do it the same way every time. And you don't have to decide as a conscious mind personality, should I start my swing now? Should I start it now? You start it now because you just finished step 5. Step 6 is the initial trigger, and step 7 is the second trigger. There's 2 triggers. And so what that does is it's a bridge state that allows you to shift from conscious mind mode to subconscious mind mode. So by the time you start your takeaway, your body is completely under the power, as it should be, of your unconscious mind. Right? You don't. And if you look at a professional basketball player, they do a trigger ritual with shooting free throws.
Sure.
We've talked about Michael Jordan would get the ball from the ref. He'd bounce it once on the ground. He'd pump it once in front of his chest, and he would release. Actually, no, he would spin it. He would bounce it, spin it, pump it, and then go. Karl Malone had a little different technique, but they all have Steph Curry has a little different. They all have a little step-by-step routine, and they don't change it. Golfers, in my experience, almost no golfers especially have a swing trigger ritual. They're doing exactly the wrong thing. Their mind gets wider and wider. Their mental space gets bigger because they're seeing that something bad might happen on this shot they're about to execute. So they're looking for the tiger or the lion to pop out, the threat skin from anywhere on the 360 degrees of space around them. In other words, most people start to go more into perceiving the upcoming shot as something that's a threat to them, as opposed to the kind of warrior ethos or combat samurai warrior, get super, super narrow, stay on your focal point, and then just sort of execute. So when you execute in the zone, which is what I teach people to be in the zone, including the Yips people, everything seems real narrow, real simple, really calm, really composed. There's no anxiety, there's no confusion. The mind is very calm because you're only focusing on one thing. In this case, I mentioned grip pressure, so my mind's in grip pressure. So the only thing I feel during those last few steps of the swing trigger ritual is my mind's on my grip pressure. Next thing I know, I'm starting my takeaway. Next thing I know, I'm at my finish. And the only thing I've been paying attention to during that roughly 2.5 seconds or so is my grip pressure. That's it. But you take a person with severe yips, they're experiencing intense fear, intense anxiety at the emotional level and at the physical level. But at the mental level, they're having thoughts go by like every 10th of a second. There's a thought coming into their head, and they're all negative. And they're like, how many ways am I going to screw this up? How many ways am I going to screw this up? Yeah.
Right. Wow, that's a lot to take in. And I know that you have a lesson coming up, so you've got to run. Thank you so much. Again, balancepointgolf.com, Jim Waldron, the Yoda of Yips, the Fauci of the Yip world, telling us about the global pandemic known as the Yip. That was, I think that's the name of the show. Jim, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much. And please stay well.
Yeah, you're well. Thanks, man. Good to be on again. Thanks, Fred.
And despite his technical struggles with getting a good signal online, you can't imagine. We spend an hour setting up his feed every time. It cracks me up. But yet, I love talking to him. I get so much out of it, and I hope you do too. Hey, our next giveaway is going to be the Pro Training Aid, courtesy of Dan Martin Golf from swingthepro.com. This prize package also includes my current favorite golf glove called the Claw, courtesy of caddydaddygolf.com. Deadline to enter to win the Claw glove and the Pro Swing Training Aid is midnight Pacific time, 3 a.m. Eastern, this coming Sunday, August 23, 2020. And we'll announce the winner on our next Golf Smarter episode. To enter, go to golfsmarter.com and click on the Enter Now banner at the top of the page. But if you just can't wait to win either of these, or feel that maybe this would be a great gift for you to give to a friend whose birthday is coming up, possibly you're feeling badly for one of your playing partners, and know that either of these would be appreciated, then pick one up with our exclusive Golf Smarter discount. You'll find the discount amount, the checkout code, and the links for both the Pro and the Claw when you're on the contest registration page, golfsmarter.com/giveaway2020. And I'll make sure to leave a link in today's show notes. And finally, time is running out on my offer for a free copy of Tony Manzoni's video, The Lost Fundamental, which is only available from Golf Smarter. Stop Googling it. You'll never find it except here. Now, to get your copy, all you need to do is write an honest review about Golf Smarter or Golf Smarter Mulligans in Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe to either of these shows. Then, once you submit your review, share it with me via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or just email, and I'll send you the link to Tony Manzoni's video, The Lost Fundamental. To report your podcast reviews, please use @GolfSmarter in social media or just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.